Well, Brian and Sue, just look at these numbers. In 2004, 59% of the voters in our state approved the proposal defining marriage as between a man and a woman. And the margins were even larger in all but one county in West Michigan.
Known as DOMA, the 1996 federal law defines marriage as between a man and a woman and allows the government to deny federal assistance, such as Social Security survivor benefits, to same-sex couples, even if they're legally married.
DOMA is gone. This is a major, broadly written opinion which strikes down the law on the ground that it discriminates against gay people.
38 states do not allow same-sex marriage. And since the IRS and the Social Security Administration look at the state where a couple lives, not where they got married, gay married couples in those states won't be eligible for benefits.
For me personally, it is important for me to go ahead and affirm that I think same-sex couples should be able to get married.
Moments ago, the U.S. Supreme Court denying a stay and paving the way for same-sex marriages to begin in Alabama. The heart of Dixie becomes the 37th state to allow gay couples to marry.
By 2015, 36 states had legalized and recognized gay marriage. The remaining 14 states had refused to recognize these marriages. In the United States, there is no such thing as a federal marriage. All marriages are handled at the state level. This means that government agencies, such as the IRS and Social Security Administration, rely upon state records to administer benefits related to marriage. This is James Obergefell and his longtime partner, John Arthur. James and John were lifelong residents of Ohio, one of the 14 states prohibiting gay marriage. In 2011, John would be diagnosed with ALS, and his health would quickly deteriorate. Always wanting to be married, in 2013, James and John would make the tough decision to fly out to Maryland and be married on the tarmac in the plane. John's health had deteriorated too far for him to be able to depart the plane. Upon their return to Ohio, they would find out that, in spite of all of their efforts, James would not be listed on John's death certificate as his surviving spouse when he died. This is because Ohio did not recognize their marriage. James would elect to file a lawsuit against the state of Ohio, claiming that Ohio had discriminated against them. Similar cases were being filed across the country. Another case in Ohio involved Brittany Henry and Brittany Rogers, who were married in New York. They wanted both of their names on the birth certificate of their adopted child, and the state of Ohio refused. Gregory Bork and Michael DeLeon married in Ontario, Canada, and sued to have their marriages recognized by the state of Kentucky. Valeria Tenko and Sophia Jesse married in New York and sued the state of Tennessee to recognize their marriage, while April DeBoer and Jane Rouse were foster parents who sued as Michigan law allowed adoption only for single parents or married couples. Each of the cases would be appealed by their respective states to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, who would then side with the states. Many believe the court's goal in doing so was for the Supreme Court to pick up the case and end the uncertainty on gay marriage. The Sixth Circuit Court opinion would differ from the other federal courts and effectively force the Supreme Court to make a decision.
Last week, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld marriage bans in a whole bunch of states. It's a complicated and very long ruling, but essentially the court just repackaged the same anti-gay arguments that our opponents made. They also ruled that courts should step back from marriage and let voters and politicians determine whether anti-gay marriage bans are constitutional. This is obviously a weird position for courts to take, and the very next day, a judge in West Virginia issued a contradictory ruling. Judge Robert C. Chambers upheld the overturning of West Virginia's marriage ban and added that the role of the judiciary is to judge whether laws are constitutional. The Sixth Circuit plaintiffs have already announced their plans to petition the U.S. Supreme Court for review. This is the first time that an appellate court has upheld a marriage ban, which means the U.S. Supreme Court is highly likely to take up at least one of these Sixth Circuit cases.
Matt Baum was right, and the Supreme Court granted cert to Obergefell.
We'll hear argument this morning in case number 14556, Obergefell versus Hodges, and the consolidated cases.
There were two major questions at stake. Does the 14th Amendment require a state to license a marriage for same-sex couples? And does the 14th Amendment require a state to recognize a marriage that was lawfully licensed and performed out of state? The decision was likely to come down to Justice Anthony Kennedy. Kennedy was a conservative justice, but was also often known for being a swing vote. He had authored Lawrence v. Texas, which banned laws criminalizing homosexual sodomy. At the same time, he voted in Boy Scouts of America v. Dale to grant the Boy Scouts the right to ban homosexuals from being scoutmasters. Justice Kennedy was also a staunch Catholic, and many believe that that may influence his decision in the case. Justice Kennedy's biggest hang-up seemed to be in the relative newness of gay marriage. Accordingly, the conservative wing attempted to turn questioning in that direction.
This definition has been with us for millennia, and it's very difficult for the court to say, oh, well, we know better.
My question is, you're not seeking to join the institution, you're seeking to change what the institution is. The fundamental core of the institution is the opposite sex relationship, and you want to introduce into it a same-sex relationship.
However, just because the case was going down this line of questioning didn't necessarily mean that Obergefell had lost the case. After all, Justice Kennedy was well known for often changing his mind on these types of things.
He certainly thought carefully and deeply about the issues that the court was considering, and as Walter Dellinger just noted, I think he had more of an open mind towards the direction that the law should go than some other justices, something that frustrated people on both sides. He was not a reliable vote for one side or another, but rather a justice who would come and consider each case on its own and reach his own view about what the Constitution should mean.
A large crowd of demonstrators formed outside of the Supreme Court as they waited for the decision to be announced. The court would ultimately come to a decision basing it off of the 14th Amendment, Lawrence v. Texas, along with Loving v. Virginia, and several other cases that define marriage as a right. As expected, the decision would be written by Justice Anthony Kennedy, and in a 5-4 decision, Justice Kennedy would legalize gay marriage in all 50 states, and each state would have to recognize the marriages of each other.
The court rules in favor of love and giving the entire nation marriage equality.
This decision took substantial consideration for Justice Kennedy, but in the end, he ultimately decided to do what he thought was right.
Well, because my religious beliefs, that's one of the reasons I wrote it. It seemed to me that I couldn't hide. And the nature of injustice is you can't see it in your own time. And as we thought about this, and I thought about it more and more, it seemed to me that just wrong under the Constitution to say that over 100,000 adopted children of gay parents could not have their parents married. I just thought that this was wrong, but it took, and I struggled with it and wrote the case over a weekend, and that's the way I came out.
And just like that, the fight for gay marriage legalization was complete in all 50 states.
It's my hope that the term gay marriage will soon be a thing of the past, that from this day forward, it will simply be marriage, and our nation will be better off because of it. I also hope that this decision has a profound effect in reducing the stigma, the hurt, the alienation and discrimination that LGBT people all too often feel when we live our lives openly and authentically.
This decision closed a major gap for the fight for gay rights in the United States. But the fight is still ongoing, and there is much work to be done. Since it was legalized nationwide by Obergefell, support for gay marriage has only been on the rise. But still, there are many figures in American politics who oppose the decision. Justice John Roberts, in his dissent, wrote how the Constitution doesn't address gay marriage at all, and how the court overstepped its boundaries and started to participate in the American political system rather than doing their duty as judges. Justices Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas have raised similar objections. And the court, ever since the ruling occurred, has slowly postured to overturn it. And public support for the Supreme Court continues to fall. But this opposition isn't just isolated to the Supreme Court. Prominent Republicans such as Ted Cruz and Bill Hagerty have voiced their opposition to gay marriage. President-elect Donald Trump has also voiced his own opposition to gay marriage, stating that he supports the traditional definition of marriage. Additionally, the Supreme Court has ruled in decisions such as Masterpiece Cake Shop that religious freedom is prioritized over equal treatment of same-sex couples. Decisions like these open up more avenues for LGBTQ+ individuals to be discriminated against in other facets of life. Many states have additionally established domestic partnerships and civil unions for same-sex couples who aren't interested in marriage. However, the IRS only recognizes married couples to file jointly and doesn't allow members of civil unions or domestic partnerships to file jointly. These regulations predominantly impact gay couples due to historic opposition to gay marriage, which caused many of these couples to seek alternative routes to partnership. As such, many LGBTQ+ individuals are still deprived of these tax benefits by the IRS. Additionally, the IRS has long sanctioned the deductibility of costs incurred to address infertility, such as in vitro fertilization and egg donation, as medical expenses. The treatment of these expenses when incurred by women without fertility problems, such as lesbian couples, however, is not quite as clear. The IRS is postured to be opposed to the deductibility of the costs associated with surrogate parenting for those not suffering from infertility. As such, lesbian and gay couples are often not given the same tax benefits of family planning given to straight couples. That being said, due to the recent decision in Loper Bright Enterprises versus Raimondo, which overturned Chevron doctrine and got rid of federal agency deference, it is likely that these tax laws may be overturned in court. However, due to the length and depth of the tax code, it will likely take a long time for all of these discrepancies to be cleared up. Even if Obergefell was to fall, the Respect for Marriage Act would still stand. It was passed by the 117th Congress in 2022 and was signed into law by President Joe Biden. The Respect for Marriage Act ensures that all 50 states are legally required to recognize the validity of same-sex and interracial marriages if performed in a jurisdiction where such marriages are legally performed. While it wouldn't require every state to perform same-sex marriages, it would require each state to recognize them. The Respect for Marriage Act was passed following Justice Clarence Thomas's controversial concurring opinion in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization, which argued that the court should reconsider the Obergefell decision. The bill passed with unanimous Democrat support and with some key Republican votes as well. So without repealing federal law, gay marriage is at least required to be recognized in every state. The road to gay marriage has been a long and difficult one. It's been one filled with unlikely allies, such as Douglas Hallward Dreimeyer, the straight Protestant attorney that argued for Obergefell, or Rick Hodges, the man the case was named after, who was in all actuality a supporter of gay marriage and a close friend of Jim Obergefell's. Or Justice Anthony Kennedy, the conservative Catholic jurist who just wanted to do what he thought was right. I thought it would be best to end with an excerpt from his opinion. No union is more profound than marriage, for it embodies the highest ideals of love, fidelity, devotion, sacrifice, and family. In forming a marital union, two people become something greater than they once were. As some of the petitioners in these cases demonstrate, marriage embodies a love that may endure even past death. It would misunderstand these men and women to say that they disrespect the idea of marriage. Their plea is that they do respect it so deeply that they seek to find its fulfillment for themselves. Their hope is not to be condemned to live in loneliness, excluded from one of civilization's oldest institutions. They ask for equal dignity in the eyes of the law. The Constitution grants them that right.